Good morning, and thank you all for being here today. We are here today to talk about public safety and the introduction of Assembly Bill 251. My name is Chris Ward. I'm the State Assembly member and the Speaker pro tempore representing the 78th Assembly District here in the central area of San Diego. And we are here at the corner in North Park at 32nd and University, actually on purpose. This intersection is actually one of the top intersections in the city of San Diego identified for crashes under the Vision Zero plan. So again, we are here at the corner of 32nd and University because this is one of the top intersections in the city where we are seeing pedestrian hits from vehicles. And we know the pedestrian fatalities reached a 4-decade high in 2020, with California having the most pedestrian fatalities in the nation. Now, simultaneously, the average vehicle size has undergone a sustained increase over the past 20 years with no signs of changing. We also know that there are studies suggesting that fatality rates can be higher for crashes involving heavier vehicles. And a study by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety found that larger cars like SUVs are disproportionately likely to injure or kill pedestrians. So, Assembly 251 is introduced and will direct the California Transportation Commission to study the connection officially between vehicle weight and injuries. We have a good amount of academic research that is out there that is undeniably consistent about the 50% to 100% increase about the likelihood of being hit in the first place, and if you are hit, the doubling or tripling of effect, the likelihood of being killed. In addition, the study would look at how higher registration fees could affect driver behavior and how additional funds could be used to improve safety features on roads for pedestrians and cyclists, just like we need here at the intersection of University and 32nd. Now, several states are already doing this. California is not the first by any means in the country, but definitely because we have higher than average rates, one that definitely deserves this study and this implementation. States like New York, Florida, Virginia, and both Dakotas, North Dakota and South Dakota, use a vehicle registration fee for excessively heavy vehicles as a part of their mechanisms for funding road safety improvements. Large vehicles weighing several thousand pounds, they're harder to stop or slow down. It's simple physics. I want to stress that this is a public safety issue, and today you'll hear from two members of our community who tragically lost loved ones on City of San Diego streets. We owe it to all Californians to look into that connection between excessively large vehicles and fatalities so that we can create an environment where everyone, including drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists, can all feel safety on our roadway. I'd like to introduce Mark Vukucevic, the co-director of Streets for All, who is helping us to lead on this effort with Assembly Bill 251. Mark.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Vukucevic, and I'm one of the state policy directors for Streets for All, an organization that started in LA but now works statewide to make our transportation system better, safer, and more equitable for all users, sponsors of AB 251 with Assembly Member Ward. Our state is facing a pedestrian safety crisis. Pedestrian fatalities reached a 4-decade high last year in the United States. California has the most pedestrians die on our roadways in the entire country. Something must be done. Numerous studies have pointed to an association between vehicle weight and pedestrian deaths. This bill will study the relationship between weight and traffic violence and possible solutions to it so that state leaders can make policy decisions that will make safer roads and streets for all. This is a matter of life and death, and we need to do everything we can to protect vulnerable road users. But who are vulnerable road users? It's our kids biking to school. It's our grandparents walking to the senior center. It's our friends who can't see too well and can't hear too well. It's our neighbor who, they're still spry, but they started using a walker recently. Everyone, whether young or young at heart, deserves to feel safe and not feel threatened by cars that are too heavy to stop safely. AB 251 is an important step towards the increasingly urgent issue of making our streets and roads safer for pedestrians and cyclists, and that's why Streets for All is sponsoring this bill. Thank you to everyone who's here. Thank you to the Assembly Ward for authoring this bill. And thank you to every person who cares about the epidemic of traffic violence on our streets and roads. Next, I'd like to introduce Steve Shin to share his story.
Good morning. I'm Steve Shin, and I wanted to share my story about the importance of public safety. 19 months ago, my wife, Laura, was suddenly killed cycling to work in an unprotected bike lane one bright sunny morning in Balboa Park by a driver in his car driving 50 miles an hour. Her helmet, her bright clothes, flashing lights, and reflecting panniers did not protect her. I never got to say goodbye to Laura. I never got to say I love you one last time. And I never got to hold her hand one last time. As architects, we were joined at the hip and we did everything together. Losing her was like losing half of my body and soul. It was like having an arm and a leg severed from me. Sandag had identified that Pershing Drive as a street really required protected bike lanes in a 2013 regional bike plan, with construction scheduled to happen in 2018. It never happened. In July of 2021, Laura was killed on the road in the bike lane, and 2 months later, Johnny Sepulveda was also killed on the same road while riding a scooter. After 2 senseless deaths, the city suddenly ordered the immediate construction of protected bike lanes. The temporary protected bike lanes were completed in 2 weeks. If the city had taken the cheap, easy action of building those protected bike lanes and providing some additional public safety as scheduled in 2018, both Laura and Johnny would still be with us today. Our city and our state need to prioritize public safety on our roads and develop complete streets that support not only buses and cars, but also scooters, bikes, joggers, and pedestrians. We must support Assembly Bill 251 because it can enhance safety for all of our streets, or for all on our streets. It can look at how higher registration fees can impact and improve driver behavior. It can create additional funds that can be used to improve safety features on roads for pedestrians and cyclists. What we really need is action and funding. Laura was an architect and a planner. She was a strong advocate for sustainability, livable communities, and complete streets. If she was alive today, she would tell you, develop safer, healthier streets, neighborhoods, and communities. Assembly Bill 251 can be part of that solution. Thank you for listening and supporting our efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Shin. And next we have Laura Keenan, another victims advocate who is here to share her story.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. I'm Laura Keenan. Matt Keenan was my husband. On September 14th, 2021, 17 months ago, I became Matt's widow at the age of 41 and a solo parent to our then 15-month-old son, Evan, when Matt was killed by a wrong-way driver while riding his bike. I'm also the co-founder of Families for Safe Streets San Diego. We're a group of families who have lost loved ones to traffic collisions or are survivors ourselves. All of our family members were hit while walking, riding, or scootering around San Diego. We advocate for safe streets to prevent other families from this unimaginable pain. Matt was my great love, my extremely healthy and fit 42-year-old husband and my son's father. He had a unique ability to connect with others and feel at ease and make others feel seen too. He loved exploring and had an incredible sense of humor and could make the mundane an adventure. He was also one of the most passionate and full of life people I've ever met. Whenever I was with him, I just wanted to say yes. Cycling was one of Matt's passions. If a day went by without getting on his bike, it was not a complete day. He was very selective about the roads he took, but like many cities in the U.S., to get to places by bike in San Diego requires riding on unsafe stretches of road. The night he was killed, the safest route was still the deadly route. That night, we had put our son to bed, and Matt decided to ride his bike to the movies. Often as the new parent, the evenings were the only time he had to exercise. I learned that after leaving our house, 20 minutes later, a wrong-way driver crossed into the bike lane and hit Matt head-on, going at least 35 miles per hour. She never saw him despite his blindingly bright lights. The painted bike lane and Matt's helmet were no protection for him. He died on the scene. Matt did everything right that night, everything he could to protect himself, but he didn't stand a chance. He was defenseless in a narrow painted bike lane, pinned against a chain link fence and a car coming straight at him. If the road he was on had infrastructure to keep cyclists safe, such as a protected bike lane or traffic calming designs to reduce car speeds, Matt would likely be alive today and we'd be raising our son together. I would often worry about Matt when he'd go on rides. I'd hope he'd come back safely. And every time I hear of another crash victim, I hope that person survives. But we shouldn't have to rely on hope. Hope can't save lives. Safe vehicles, safe speeds, and safe streets can. This is a preventable public health crisis. Matt did not need to die. No one else needs to die. Every day on our roads, 125 people are killed. That's like a plane crashing every single day. It is unacceptable. In San Diego County alone, 294 people were killed in 2021, reaching a 10-year high. As heavier and larger vehicles become more prevalent and more popular, these figures will only increase if our government is not proactive about keeping the most vulnerable on the roads safe, cyclists and pedestrians. There's a huge funding gap to build the much-needed infrastructure we need. Our local governments need additional revenue resources. It's sad that funding is an issue when it comes to saving lives, but that is the grim reality. Matt was robbed of fatherhood, and Evan was robbed of the incredible dad that he should have for Matt for his lifetime. Matt never got to see Evan walk or talk in complete sentences, and he doesn't get to experience Evan's amazingly fun, compassionate, and charming personality. It's so much like Matt's. At two and a half, he says, "Daddy died. He was hit on his red bike every day almost," and talks about his daddy often. It breaks my heart that this is my son's life, and Matt's was cut so short. Evan's starting to ride his bike now, and Matt would be so excited. Like Matt, he's a natural. For now, he's in the confines of a school playground, but one day he'll ride on the streets and sidewalks of San Diego, which terrifies me. Riding your bike or walking around your community should not be terrifying, and it certainly shouldn't be a life and death decision. I'm optimistic that this bill, AB 251, will help fund the much-needed road safety improvements that for most vulnerable people on the road. So someone else's Matt, someone else's husband, someone else's father and son is able to come home safely to his family and get to experience all the life that Matt didn't get to. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And our last speaker this morning is our City Council President in the City of San Diego, Shin Low Rivera.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shin Low Rivera. I serve as the San Diego City Council President, and I also represent San Diego City Council District 9, just a few blocks that way and a few blocks that way. I want to start by thanking Steve and Laura for sharing your stories. Every time I hear you speak, it reminds me of how important this issue is. Everybody deserves to feel safe. Everybody. And that is especially true when you're doing basic things like walking or riding a bike or just trying to move around your neighborhood. Unfortunately, as has been shared this morning, that's not the case today. 294 people in the county of San Diego were killed last year in traffic crashes, and those are crashes that could have been prevented. And while far too often in America we seem to be comfortable with senseless and unnecessary violence, we shouldn't be. And I really appreciate Assemblymember Ward stepping up and doing what he can to address traffic violence in this way. The intersection here and some of the others in my district, which are amongst the deadliest in the county, are intersections that I ride through often. And I often think about Laura's story as I get on my bike and try to make my way to work or wherever else I might be going. And it shouldn't be that riding your bike to work feels like a potentially life-threatening activity. We must do better to slow down cars, keep our residents safe, and by supporting AB 251, we will authorize the California Transportation Commission to convene a task force and study the potential costs and benefits of a passenger vehicle weight fee. I'm going to be honest, I can anticipate the arguments against this already, and know that they will be nothing more than a distraction. There will be folks out there who say that this is about an infringement on personal liberty, that politicians will be trying to tell people what cars they can and can't drive. Those are distractions. As Assemblymember Ward said, this is about one thing and one thing only: public safety. That's it. So don't be distracted by folks who say it's about something else. This is about making sure that all Californians feel safe when they walk, when they bike, and they move around their communities. We need to do this. The revenue that it could generate would be used to build protected bike lanes, speed bumps, traffic circles, median barriers, critical infrastructure that will save lives, and that could have saved lives if it had been in place before. So I am very, very appreciative for the opportunity to be here today. I will close by saying this. We heard from two speakers today who lost the most important people in their lives and have made it a mission to show up and share their stories, despite that being incredibly hard, because they don't want other families to feel the same way. And if you think this is about politics or about anything else besides keeping people safe, I really hope you will reflect on the stories shared by Steve and Laura and how taking actions like Assemblymember Ward has proposed, we can prevent more Steves and Lauras from having to share the devastation of losing their loved ones. With that, I thank you all for being here, and we'll pass it back to Assemblymember Ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. And just a quick personal anecdote, you know, it feels like sometimes this can be a daily occurrence. And just coming here this morning at 9 o'clock to drop my daughter off at school was just, again, one of the more recent occurrences where I stepped out onto the crosswalk with my daughter to walk across the street, and a large pickup truck just ran right around that red that stop sign, just didn't even stop. And so as parents, as neighbors, we know that this is a very regular occurrence. And we see even here, this is a graph that shows over the last 3 decades the incidence of the number of kids that were killed in front rollovers from excessively large vehicles. So we know that the trends are there, and we really need to act and do more about that. And with that, I do hope everybody understands how important this issue is. Our pedestrian fatality rate, again, is more than 25% higher than the national average, and no state has more pedestrian deaths on the roadway, according to the California Office of Traffic Safety. Our excessively large vehicles are substantially more likely than cars to hit pedestrians when making turns in the first place, suggesting that these larger vehicles may not even afford drivers a clear view of people when crossing the roads. And so this data, this comprehensive data, is important. I've had some advocates, as we were exploring this issue, say that we should just jump right ahead and just institute a fee. But as a state as large as California, and with so many variables that are out there as well, and as quickly as we need this safety funding here in cities like San Diego and our region, we know that we want to make sure that that nexus is strong, that we do that comprehensive study quickly, and that we inform the legislature about the findings of that study to have a responsible policy as we talk about things like vehicle registration fees. So we're going to look further into that relationship, and we're going to move this action forward. I'm proud to author this bill, and I'm really proud. I didn't want to neglect. We have another colleague here as well, the council member and vice mayor from the city of La Mesa, Colin Parent, a dear friend, and the executive director of Circulate San Diego. And more advocates are coming on board every day as they see the merits of Assembly Bill 251. With that, it's just an introduction today. We will be first hearing this in the Assembly Transportation Committee on March the 20th, where we talk about, of which I am a member. It was a 15-member committee, and not just that bill, but a lot of other bills that are proposed for California to improve the safety for all road users in our state. With that, the press conference is concluded, but I will take questions right now, and if there are no other questions, we will be happy to take one-on-ones as well. Yes.